Grayson Whitmore stood still beneath it, unmoved. His home, 3 stories of historic Charleston craftsmanship with wraparound porches and gas lanterns glowing softly, had never felt more like a showroom. Clean, flawless, cold. Outside, the gardenias bloomed too early. Inside, Camille's laughter echoed faintly from the upstairs hallway. He adjusted the cuffs of his custom-tailored shirt, the monogram, GW stitched in gold thread. Perfect. Pristine. Just like everything in his life that could be bought. But under the polished exterior, a pressure he couldn't name kept tightening. Success, he had. Respect, mostly. Love? That word had gotten quiet. Grayson? Camille's voice floated down the staircase. Are we still ordering dinner, or are we pretending to be gourmet again? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the portrait hanging above the staircase, an oil painting of the Whitmore estate, a commissioned legacy piece from his mother's favorite artist. The brushstrokes were immaculate. Like the family image Diane Whitmore had curated all her life. I'll order, he said finally, voice low. Whatever you want. Camille reappeared in the hall, silk robe draped casually over one shoulder, her hair slightly tousled from their earlier encounter. She wasn't embarrassed to be here. She never was. You okay? She asked, descending slowly. You look like someone just ghosted you at a board meeting. Grayson gave her a practiced smile. Just tired. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. She stepped closer, slipping her arms around his waist. Well, I can think of a few ways to wake you up. His phone buzzed. He looked down. Text from Elena. Only 2 words. I'm coming home. He froze. Camille tilted her head. Problem? He pulled away gently, sliding the phone into his pocket. Nothing urgent. But it was. The words weren't dramatic, they weren't angry, they were precise. Final. She'd been out all day. Said she had a class to cover at her studio, something about final rehearsals with her students. But she never texted like this. Not Elena. She spoke with music in her voice, even through messages. This was a different note. The front door creaked. Camille blinked. Did you order already? He turned sharply. No, he hadn't. Footsteps. Light, steady, not hurried, not hesitant. Eleanor stepped into the foyer. Pregnant, beautiful, silent. The air fractured. Grayson's breath caught in his throat. The way her eyes locked on his, dark, unreadable, made every instinct he had scream to say something, anything. But there were no words good enough. Not now. Not when she saw Camille standing behind him. Wearing his robe. Camille let out a small gasp. Oh, Eleanor blinked once. No tears. No flinching. Just a long, silent pause as she took in the scene with unbearable clarity. Her gaze dropped for half a second to Camille's robe, then rose again to meet Grayson's. Grayson stepped forward. Eleanor. She held up a hand. Calm. Controlled. It stopped him colder than any slap ever could have. I'm not here to fight, she said, her voice even. Just to pack a few things. Elena, please, he tried again, the words tasting dry and useless. She exhaled, quiet but firm. Don't. Not now. Camille took a step back, shrinking under Elena's gaze. Elena, she began, but stopped herself. I should go. Eleanor didn't respond. She didn't need to. Grayson watched, helpless, as Camille gathered her things and disappeared upstairs. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred, heavy with the weight of everything that had once been beautiful between them. "Where are you staying?" he asked, already knowing she wouldn't answer. Elena turned away, her hand gently resting on her belly, protective. "Maternal. Somewhere I can sleep without wondering who else you let in while I was gone." Each word landed like truth nailed into wood. He wanted to explain. He wanted to cry. He wanted to go back to 2 years ago, to the moment he knelt beside her and promised her love would be his legacy, not just his name. But the words caught on pride. And pride, he realized too late, was a terrible companion. She moved up the stairs without another glance. A few minutes passed. He heard the drawers open, the closet door creak, the rustle of soft clothes being folded into a suitcase. He didn't follow. He stood in the hallway, paralyzed by a truth too bitter to swallow. She had already let go. He just hadn't noticed until now. When she came down again, it was with a single suitcase and a small music case, the one she used for her sheet music. He remembered helping her carry it when they first moved in. She said it felt like carrying her soul. "I'll send for the rest," she said simply. Grayson took a step forward. "You don't have to go. We can—" "No," she interrupted, more gently than he deserved. "You made your choice. I'm just finally accepting it." He felt the words slam into him, but her eyes never lost that heartbreaking calm. Then she looked down at her belly, and for the first time, her voice trembled. "She doesn't deserve this," she whispered. That broke him. Grayson's hand reached toward her instinctively, but she stepped back, shaking her head. Not with hatred, but with heartbreak. "I need to be somewhere she's wanted," she said. Then, before he could even fully process what he'd lost, the door closed behind her. He stood in the foyer for a long time. Outside, the sun was setting in streaks of peach and lavender across the Charleston skyline. Inside, the house finally sounded honest. Empty. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The antique clock in the study struck 8, each chime echoing like a judgment through the hollow mansion. Grayson sat in the leather wingback chair, untouched scotch in hand, staring at the empty space near the staircase where Eleanor had last stood. The silence mocked him. Everything still looked the same, clean, curated, picture-perfect. But the air had shifted. Something essential was missing. Not just her, not just Maya, but something deeper. Respect. He had always told himself he was a good man. Flawed, maybe. Ambitious, sure, but good. The kind who provided, built things, made difficult decisions. But standing in the aftershock of Elena's exit, he realized something he'd never let himself believe before. He'd become the man his father was, and he hated it. His phone buzzed again. He didn't look at it. Camille had texted 4 times already. A sad little sequence of justifications and awkward apologies. "I didn't know she'd be back. You never said you were trying to fix things. You told me she didn't care anymore." But she had cared. He'd seen it in her eyes before she turned away for good. That quiet devastation that only comes from loving someone who couldn't love you well in return. The scotch burned going down. Not enough. He stood and walked toward the grand piano in the sunroom. Elena used to play in the early mornings before the city woke. He'd loved waking up to the sound of her fingers gliding through jazz scales and Bach preludes. It made the house feel alive. Now, even the piano looked like it had been holding its breath since she left. Grayson opened the lid slowly and sat down. His fingers hovered above the keys. He hadn't touched the thing in years. Eleanor had once offered to teach him, laughing when he admitted he could barely manage chopsticks. He pressed a single note. Then another. The sounds rang out, too bright, too lonely. He dropped his hands. The next morning, the Whitmore name was trending on local blogs. Grayson Whitmore's wife moves out. Amid scandal, Camille Hart seen leaving Whitmore estate at dusk. Charleston didn't forgive scandal easily, not when it came from families like his. Appearances mattered here. Legacy mattered. The Whitmores had a 100-year history of polished smiles and pearl-draped secrets. He didn't call the PR team. Let them spin whatever they wanted. Instead, he got in his car and drove, not to Camille's, not to the office, to her. Luis Martinez answered the door. The retired firefighter had never warmed to Grayson, and today wasn't going to change that. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at Grayson for a long second, jaw set, eyes hard. Then he stepped back. She's in the back, with Maya. Grayson stepped into the modest home. The scent of Cuban coffee lingered in the air, and framed photos of Elena's family lined every wall. The contrast was almost violent. Where his house screamed wealth, this house whispered warmth. Eleanor stood in the backyard under a lemon tree, swaying gently with Maya in her arms. The baby was barely 6 months from entering the world, but already had a quiet presence, nestled into Elena's shoulder like she'd always belonged there. Grayson's throat tightened. Elena turned slightly when she heard the door. Her expression didn't change. "Don't," she said, before he could speak. "I just wanted to see you." "You saw me," she replied softly, rocking Maya with slow precision. "Now go." "Elena, please." He stepped closer, but not too close. "Let me explain." She shook her head. "There's nothing you can say that changes what I saw. It wasn't serious with Camille. It was a mistake. I was tired, lonely, stressed," she cut in, her voice still low but razor sharp. "You were bored, Grayson. That's the truth. And I stopped being exciting the moment I started showing. That's not fair." "No," she replied, eyes now locked on his. "It's not. But it's true." Grayson rubbed a hand over his face. "I didn't plan for this. I didn't plan for any of it to fall apart. And yet," she said, adjusting Maya slightly, "you're standing in the ruins with a match in your hand." Silence swelled between them. He looked at her, really looked, messy bun, bare face, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but still the most radiant person he'd ever known. Not because she was trying, because she never had to. "I miss you," he said quietly. Eleanor blinked, just once, and it looked like it cost her something to hold back the tears. "You miss who I used to be, before your betrayal changed me." He swallowed. "Let me be there, for her at least." She sighed and looked down at Maya, brushing a finger over her soft cheek. "You gave up that right, when you made me feel like I wasn't enough, like we weren't enough. I can be better." "Then be better," she said, voice catching for the first time. "But don't do it for me. Do it because you're tired of hurting people who love you." He nodded slowly. He wasn't sure what hurt more, her leaving, or the fact that she still spoke with hope, but none of it aimed at him anymore. "I won't bother you again," he said finally. Elena hesitated, then turned back toward the tree. "Don't make promises you can't keep." He left without another word. Later that week, he received a letter from Elena's attorney. Custody waiver. Clean, direct. No visitation for the foreseeable future. All rights deferred unless revisited legally. It was more painful than the divorce papers would be. Still, he signed it, not because he agreed, but because she needed space. And for once in his life, he wanted to give her something, without strings attached. The next day, he passed a shop on King Street that he and Elena used to visit every December. She'd loved their hand-carved ornaments. He walked inside, stood in front of the small painted angels she always admired. He bought one, not to give her, just to remember. That night, alone again in the mansion that had once echoed with her laughter, Grayson placed the ornament gently on the empty mantel. A tiny thing, but something to hold on to. The low hum of Grayson's espresso machine filled the silence of the morning. He stood barefoot in the kitchen, shirt wrinkled, cufflinks tossed aside, watching the dark liquid stream into a small porcelain cup Elena had picked out 2 Christmases ago. He hadn't used it since. Outside, Charleston woke slowly, sunlight streaming in golden lines through live oak branches, and the distant sound of waves brushing against the Battery. But inside the Whitmore estate, time had slowed to a kind of quiet ache. Nothing screamed anymore, not even regret. It whispered. He stared at the unopened custody document again. Even with his signature on the dotted line, it still felt unreal. Is this what remorse is supposed to look like? Rachel's voice came from behind him. Grayson turned to find his younger sister leaning in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She wore jeans and a simple navy blouse, hair pulled into a neat bun casual. Unassuming, but her gaze cut straight through him. "I didn't hear you come in," he said, clearing his throat. "You didn't hear a lot of things, apparently." She walked over, snatched the cup, and took a sip before grimacing. "God, this is bitter." "Yeah," he muttered. "Some things just are." She looked at him for a long moment, then placed the cup down with a soft clink. "I ran into Elena at the market last week." Grayson stiffened. "Is she okay?" "She's surviving, teaching more, leading the kids' choir again." A flicker of pain crossed his face. "She's not returning my calls." "She's not going to," Rachel said gently. "Not for a while. Maybe not ever." Grayson looked away. "I told her I was disappointed in you," she added, more softly now. "You and me both." Rachel sighed and stepped closer. "I didn't come here to pile on. I came to tell you you've got 2 choices. Keep sulking in this mausoleum you call a house, or try being the kind of man who deserves to be forgiven, even if forgiveness never comes." Grayson nodded slowly, words lodged somewhere deep in his chest. Rachel's tone softened. "You know what really hurt her? It wasn't Camille. It was realizing she didn't recognize the man she married anymore." That landed hard. After she left, Grayson found himself drifting. Not back to his office or into work, which now felt absurdly hollow, but into the one place he hadn't dared go since Elena walked out. The music room. It smelled like old paper, and the faint trace of her perfume. Her sheet music still sat in neat stacks, untouched. Her favorite chair faced the window, a place where she'd watched the garden bloom year after year. He sat down and stared at the grand piano, its lid still closed like a secret. He opened it slowly and rested his hands on the keys. A few hesitant notes, then more. Clumsy, broken, but honest. That night, he reached out to someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Pastor Glenn, who'd married them under a white pergola in springtime when everything had felt possible. They met at a quiet cafe, tucked away on a side street near the college. Pastor Glenn looked older, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "I wondered how long it would take," the pastor said, sitting down across from him. Grayson didn't argue. He just lowered his gaze. "She's not mine to ask forgiveness from anymore," he said finally. "But I don't know how to move without it." Pastor Glenn nodded slowly. "Forgiveness is a gift, but redemption, that's earned." Grayson looked up. "You want to be a better man?" Glenn continued. "Then stop thinking about what you've lost and start thinking about what you're willing to give. Start small. Be useful. Show up." The words echoed in Grayson's chest for hours afterward. He started showing up, quietly. He made anonymous donations to the community center where Elena taught music, bought new instruments, refurbished the practice space, left no name. Just notes that said, "For the next voice that needs to be heard." He declined every invitation to high society functions, stopped attending the rooftop galas and gallery openings, sold his shares in the real estate firm Camille had introduced him to, and when Camille called again, her voice syrupy, apologetic, hopeful, he let it ring until it stopped. But for every step forward, a new reminder would appear. A photo of Maya on Rachel's fridge, growing fast. A news feature about Elena's youth choir winning a city award. Or worse, walking through the square and catching Elena's voice as she directed students during rehearsal. Bright, focused, like he'd never even existed. One evening, he passed a bookstore downtown and stopped short. Inside stood a woman browsing through a poetry collection. Her hair was lighter, cut shorter than Eleanor's, but the profile made his breath hitch. For a moment, hope rose, absurd and desperate. But it wasn't her. He stepped back, the ache settling deeper. Later that night, he poured himself a drink and sat at his desk, staring at the empty nursery blueprint he'd once drawn on a whim. He could still see the yellow walls Elena had wanted, the delicate stenciled birds they'd planned to add. Hope lived in every line of that sketch. He folded it carefully, placed it in an envelope, and tucked it into a drawer. The next morning, he woke early, shaved, and dressed without music or distraction. Then he wrote a check. A large one. He mailed it to a scholarship fund, Eleanor's fund, anonymously, of course. That afternoon, Rachel called. "Elena's father's been hospitalized," she said quietly. "She's overwhelmed, needs help." "But won't ask you." Grayson's heart thudded. "What happened?" "Minor scare. They think he'll be okay." "But Maya needs to be picked up from her preschool." Silence. Rachel sighed. "I'm not asking you to fix anything. I'm asking if you'll just show up, no expectations." He closed his eyes. "I'll be there in 15. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought matter to me either way." Grayson sat in his car, engine idling, staring at the preschool gates like they were the entrance to another life. Children's laughter floated through the air, light and innocent, slicing through the fog of tension knotted in his chest. It had been almost a year since he'd held his daughter. He didn't even know what her voice sounded like now, what made her laugh, if she still liked yellow bows or had moved on to pink. He glanced at the passenger seat, a soft plush bear with a ribbon around its neck, Maya's favorite from the nursery. He'd found it in a storage box last night. Something in him couldn't let it go. Then the gates opened. Mothers and fathers filtered in, arms wide, eyes warm. The kind of scene that should have felt comforting, but it just made him ache. A teacher stepped out, scanning the crowd. And then, there she was, Maya. Hair in a ponytail, tiny sneakers, floral backpack bouncing with every step. She looked older, still small, still delicate, but no longer a baby. Her eyes were wide and curious, scanning the line of parents like she knew something was different. When the teacher bent to whisper something in her ear, she looked toward Grayson. He stepped out of the car slowly. Maya stared at him, uncertain. "Hi," he said gently, kneeling down. She tilted her head. "You're the picture." His breath hitched. "What?" "Mommy has a picture," she said, "on her shelf. She says, 'This was before.'" Grayson felt the ground wobble beneath him. He smiled, unsure whether it was from joy or grief. "I guess I was." She studied him with more seriousness than most grown men he'd faced in boardrooms. Then, with a soft shrug, she took his hand. The teacher gave him a look, hesitant, protective, but said nothing. He opened the car door and buckled her in. Every movement felt sacred. Fragile. As they pulled away from the school, she glanced at him sideways. "Are you my daddy again?" He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I've always been your daddy. But Mommy said you had to grow up first." He laughed, then caught the emotion rising in his throat. "She's right." They stopped at the corner bakery. Maya pointed at a lemon tart in the window. "She loves those," she said matter-of-factly. "Elena?" She nodded. "She eats them when she's sad." Grayson stared at the pastry for a moment, before ordering 2. Back at Elena's house, Maya danced inside with the tart in hand, shouting, "Mommy, look who got me!" Elena stepped into the doorway. She froze. Grayson held up his hands. "Rachel called, said Luis had a scare. I didn't want her stranded." Elena didn't move. "How was she?" "Braver than me," he said quietly. Elena nodded once and turned back into the kitchen. He followed her, pausing at the threshold. The home was warm. Light streamed through lace curtains. A family photo hung above the mantel. Elena, Maya, Luis. No trace of him. "I brought one for you too," he said, setting the tart on the counter. She glanced at it, then back at him. "You remember?" "I never forgot." She moved to the sink, rinsing a cup. "She said you told her you've always been her daddy." "I meant it." Elena's hands trembled slightly as she placed the cup on the drying rack. "You don't get to come back in like this and act like time stopped." "I'm not acting. I wanted her to know I'm trying." "She's a child, Grayson," she said sharply. "She doesn't need your guilt. She needs consistency." "I can be that." "You weren't." He stepped closer. "I know." The silence between them swelled. Not angry, just heavy. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "Not yet. I just want to be present." "You're still good with words," she murmured. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "What's that?" "A letter." "For her. I've been writing them since you left." Elena hesitated before taking it. She opened it slowly, eyes skimming the ink. After a long pause, she folded it again. "I'll decide when she's ready to read it." "That's fair." She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, gaze tired. "You hurt me, Grayson. Not with the affair, not even with the lies. You hurt me by making me question what I was worth." "I know. And I had to answer that question alone. Pregnant. Starting over." Grayson's voice cracked. "I was scared." She looked at him. "So was I. But I stayed." Her words lingered. "I'm not here to rewrite the past," he said finally. "Just to prove the future can be better." She stared at him, eyes searching. Then she nodded, barely. "For today, that's enough." He exhaled, relieved and devastated all at once. Maya burst into the room, powdered sugar on her lips. "Mommy, Daddy said he can't play piano, but he wants to learn. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. He said that? Maya nodded eagerly. You can teach him. Grayson laughed. If she's willing. Elena shook her head, almost smiling. We'll see. As he prepared to leave, Elena walked him to the door. She didn't hug him, didn't ask him to stay. But she said something he hadn't heard in months. Drive safe. And that was something. The next morning, Grayson arrived at the music center 10 minutes early, a paper cup of coffee in each hand, one black, one with oat milk and honey. He still remembered how Elena took hers. That little detail had somehow survived the year between them. The one thing that hadn't faded. He stood outside the brick building, its ivy-covered exterior glowing gold in the morning light. Inside, muffled voices and faint piano notes drifted through the walls. It was warm, familiar, yet still felt like stepping into someone else's life. When the door finally opened, Nina was the one who spotted him. Her eyebrows shot up. Well, look who remembered how doors work, she said, folding her arms. What are you doing here, Whitmore? I'm early, he said simply, holding up the coffee as proof of peace. And I'm not here to start anything. She looked at the coffee like it was a trick. Elena didn't say you'd be coming. She doesn't know. I wanted to help. I heard some of the older kids don't have instruments for their showcase. Nina studied him for a beat too long, then stepped aside. You're lucky I'm in a forgiving mood. He nodded and walked in. The space smelled like sheet music and lemon polish. Kids bustled around in small clusters tuning violins, adjusting music stands. It had life, texture, soul. At the far end of the room, Eleanor stood by the whiteboard, giving directions. Her voice was calm but commanding, weaving between firm instruction and gentle encouragement. She was in her element here, and it showed. He didn't interrupt, just watched. After a while, she turned and froze. Their eyes met. He lifted the coffee cup slightly, a quiet offering. She blinked, then walked over, her expression unreadable. You're brave, she said quietly, taking the oat milk one. Or foolish, he replied. Elena took a cautious sip. Still know how I take it. He smiled faintly. Some things stick. Before she could respond, one of the older students ran over. Mrs. Martinez, the cello's busted again. It keeps slipping. I'll handle it, she said, then looked back at Grayson. You still know how to hold a wrench? He gave her a crooked grin. Lead the way. They spent the next half hour in the instrument room, an old converted office filled with cases, loose strings, rosin, and half-fixed stands. It reminded him of the workshop in her father's garage, chaos that made sense to Elena alone. She crouched beside the cello, adjusting the end pin. Careful with that one. It belonged to my mom. He knelt beside her. I didn't know you kept it here. She would have wanted it used. Not gathering dust. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. As she tightened a peg, her hand brushed his. They both paused. Elena, he said softly, I want to earn this, not rush it, not manipulate it. Just show you I'm learning. She didn't move her hand. I know, she whispered, but some days it's harder than others. What do you mean? I mean, I remember how you used to look at me. Like I was the center of your world. Her voice cracked slightly. And now I have to remind myself not to miss that. He closed his eyes for a moment, willing the sting in his chest to settle. I still look at you that way, he said. You just stopped looking back. A long silence filled the room, thick with things neither of them knew how to fix. The moment broke when Nina appeared in the doorway, clearing her throat louder than necessary. "Sorry to interrupt this heart-to-heart, but we've got a rehearsal in 10, and I need someone tall to hang that new banner." Grayson rose first, brushing the dust from his slacks. "I've got it." As he walked past Nina, she leaned in just enough for him to hear. "You break her again," she whispered, "and I'll make sure this time she doesn't leave anything worth coming back to." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. He knew she meant every word. By the end of the day, the rehearsal space buzzed with music and laughter. Grayson found himself helping tune guitars, hand out snacks, tape sheet music. No press, no photos, just presence. Later, as the last of the kids trickled out, Eleanor approached him with a folded paper. "What's this?" "Schedule for the next 3 weeks," she said. "If you're serious about helping, be here." No grand gestures, no disappearing acts. "I'll be here," he said. "I'm not promising anything," she added quickly. "This doesn't mean I've forgiven you. I don't expect you to." She looked at him for a long moment. "But I'm starting to believe you mean it." Then she turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the doorway, holding a calendar and a paper cup that had long gone cold. And for the first time in months, he felt something real beginning to thaw. The early evening light painted Charleston in gold, filtering through Spanish moss and casting long, quiet shadows along King Street. Grayson stood outside the small community center, a bundle of printed programs in one hand, the faint buzz of nervous teenage musicians drifting through the open window. Inside, the rehearsal was already underway. He paused for a moment at the door, not out of hesitation but reverence. These moments were becoming sacred to him, not because they were his, but because they weren't. He was only here because someone stronger had made the choice to let him be. Elena's voice floated through the air, calm but firm. "All right, from the top. Let's go over that chorus again. Slower this time." She had a way of speaking that made even mistakes feel like possibilities. He used to think she saved that tone for her students. He realized now she used to use it with him too, before everything cracked. He stepped inside quietly and caught her eye. She didn't smile, but she nodded, just enough to say she saw him. He set the stack of programs on the front table and joined Nina, who was taping chords along the floor. "You're not bad at this whole volunteer dad thing," she said without looking up. "I'm a quick learner," he replied. Nina arched a brow. "Took you long enough." Before he could respond, Maya spotted him from across the room. "Daddy!" Her shout turned every head. Grayson knelt, arms open, as she raced across the floor and tackled him with all the force her little frame could muster. He caught her easily, hugging her tighter than he meant to. "I missed you today," she said, beaming. "I missed you more," he whispered back. Elena looked up again, this time with something close to a smile, soft but fleeting. After rehearsal, while the kids and parents began to drift out, Elena stayed behind to stack chairs. Grayson joined her without being asked, moving in quiet rhythm beside her. "You've been consistent," she said finally, breaking the silence. "I said I would be." She nodded, not looking at him. "I notice the small things now," she added. "You show up early. You clean up without a word. You listen when no one's speaking." "I'm trying," he said, "not just to prove something to you, but to myself." She placed a chair gently against the wall. "You're not who you were. That's clear." Grayson looked at her. But I'm still not sure who you're becoming." He stepped closer, not enough to invade, just enough to be felt. "Then let me keep showing you." They stood in stillness, just for a second too long, until Maya called from the hallway. "Mommy, I want to show Daddy the music room." Elena blinked, stepping back into the reality that always came too soon. Go ahead. I'll finish here. Grayson followed Maya into the back wing of the center, where the older instruments were kept. The room smelled of old wood, brass polish, and ink. She ran to the piano, climbing up onto the bench with practiced ease. I can play the beginning of your song now, she said proudly. He froze. My song? She nodded. The one Mommy used to play when she missed you. His breath caught. Maya began pressing the keys, tentative, but recognizable. The melody. The one Elena used to play in the early morning, when the sun touched only the tops of the oak trees. The one she said reminded her of hope. When the last note lingered, Maya turned to him. Do you think Mommy's sad when she plays it? He knelt beside her, heart aching. I think she plays it because she remembers something beautiful. Maya frowned. Then why does she look like she wants to cry after? Grayson took her hand gently. Because even beautiful things can hurt sometimes. But that doesn't mean they stop being beautiful. She nodded slowly, satisfied in the way only children could be. That night, as Grayson walked Elena and Maya to their car, the street lamp cast long shadows on the pavement. Elena buckled Maya in, then closed the door softly. She's playing it again, Grayson said quietly. The song. Elena leaned against the car, arms crossed. I never really stopped. Why? She didn't answer right away. Because it's a part of my story, she said at last. Even the broken parts deserve a melody. He nodded, eyes locked on hers. You're becoming someone I don't recognize, she said, voice trembling just slightly. But for the first time in a long time, that might be a good thing. He stepped back, letting her close the door. As they drove off, he stood beneath the streetlight, one hand still warm from holding his daughter's. Inside him, a quiet chord resolved. Not perfectly. Not yet. But it was the beginning of harmony, and that was enough for now. The rain fell softly over Charleston, tapping against the window panes of Grayson's study like a rhythm trying to get his attention. He sat at his desk, the glow of his reading lamp casting warm light over a growing pile of handwritten letters, each one addressed to Maya, none of them sent. Tonight's letter was different. He'd rewritten the same paragraph 4 times, unsure whether it was meant for her or Elena. Sometimes the people we hurt most are the ones who saw something in us we hadn't become yet, and they waited. Until they couldn't anymore. He paused, pen hovering, eyes stinging. A knock at the front door startled him. He checked the clock, nearly 8 p.m. Too late for delivery. Too early for coincidence. When he opened the door, Rachel stood there, umbrella in one hand, her face tight with something unreadable. Evening, she said, stepping inside. Didn't know you were coming by. Didn't plan to. Just left dinner with Mom. Grayson closed the door behind her. That sounds intense. She wants you to pull out of the donation to the youth program. Of course she did. She thinks it looks desperate. Bleeding heart PR doesn't suit a Whitmore, Rachel mimicked, rolling her eyes. She also thinks you should be dating again. Something visible, clean. Grayson exhaled. I'm not looking for clean. She also thinks Elena is manipulating you by letting you see Maya again. He froze. She let me? Rachel gave him a hard look. You think Maya just wandered into your arms by accident? He leaned against the table, shoulders dropping. I figured she softened. She's watching, Grayson. Every pickup, every drop-off. Every pause before you speak. She's looking for the cracks. He didn't answer. Rachel stepped closer, lowering her voice. I told her you were different now. but she's not going to let her guard down until she knows the man who's showing up isn't just wearing guilt like a suit. He looked at her, eyes weary. I'm not pretending anymore. I know, she said gently. But you're still living like you're trying to pay off a debt. You want her back? You have to live like someone who's found purpose, whether she forgives you or not. The rain grew heavier. Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out a folded flyer. There's a fundraiser concert next week. Elena's students are performing. She didn't want to ask you directly. Grayson unfolded it. His name was listed among anonymous sponsors at the bottom. Rachel watched him carefully. She's letting you in, 1 inch at a time. But it's not just about showing up anymore. It's about standing for something. He nodded, gripping the paper like it meant more than just an event. After she left, he sat for a long time, staring out into the storm. By morning, he had made a decision. That week, he began working side by side with the center's staff, not just as a donor, but a volunteer. Fixing sound cables, cleaning up after rehearsals, running errands. Nothing flashy, nothing worth press. Just present. The day of the concert arrived humid and bright. Grayson arrived early to help with chairs and lighting. The small church auditorium buzzed with last-minute energy. Students tuning instruments, volunteers handing out programs, teachers wrangling nerves. Elena was already there, clipboard in hand, dressed in a long slate blue dress that brought out the richness in her skin. Her hair was pulled back, a few loose strands framing her face. She looked collected, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "You good?" he asked gently. She turned, surprised to find him at her side. "Trying to be." "You will be," he said. "You always are, when it matters." For a moment, she let the compliment sit between them. Maya ran up, her tiny black shoes clicking against the tile. "Daddy, come sit with me before it starts." Grayson knelt. "How about I save us the best 2 seats?" Maya nodded and darted back toward the student row. Elena smiled slightly. "She's been talking about this for weeks. She's brave." "She gets it from me," Elena said, then paused. "But the music, that's all you." The words hit deeper than she probably meant them to. As the lights dimmed, Grayson took his seat beside Rachel in the second row. Maya sat with the choir, glancing back at him every few minutes, eyes wide with excitement. The first few performances went by in a rush of soft applause and nervous grace. Then, as the final act prepared to take the stage, Eleanor stepped up to the microphone. "Before our last song," she said, her voice steady, "I want to thank someone who's given our program more than just support, but belief. In second chances, in growth, in music as something that can heal." She glanced at Grayson, just for a second. "Our students wanted to dedicate this to the people in our lives who saw the best in us, even when we didn't know it was there." Maya stepped forward. A single note rang from the piano. Grayson's breath caught. It was that melody, the one Elena had played on quiet mornings. Now it belonged to Maya. Her voice, small, sweet, trembling, wrapped around the room like light. "You were the rhythm I didn't know I needed." He lowered his head, eyes wet. When the final chord faded, the applause was thunderous. But Grayson didn't clap. He just sat there, hand over his heart, feeling every word settle into place. Later, as people filtered out, Eleanor approached slowly. "She wanted you to hear it first." He nodded, voice thick. "She meant every word." "So did I," Elena said. They stood close, closer than they had in a long time. And for the first time, There was no defense in her eyes, only possibility. The heat of late spring settled thick over Charleston, the kind that clung to your skin and made everything feel slower, except Grayson's thoughts. Those ran fast. He stood outside the courtyard cafe Elena liked, one hand on the wrought iron gate, the other gripping his phone. Her text had been simple. Lunch? Just us, 12:30. It wasn't casual. Not after everything. Inside, the courtyard was shaded by jasmine vines and a large umbrella. A breeze stirred the napkins on the table where Elena already sat, sunglasses perched on her head, dress flowing like the wind had picked it out for her. He approached slowly. "You're early," she said, not unkindly. "I didn't want to be late." She smiled. "Still not sure if you're trying to be predictable or impressive." "Hopefully both." He took the seat across from her. For a moment, they just sat in silence, the sounds of clinking dishes and distant city life settling around them. Then Elena looked up. "You've changed, Grayson." He blinked. "That's a good thing, right?" "It's a thing," she said carefully, "but I need to know if it's lasting." "I do too." She studied him for a beat. "Rachel says you turned down a position on the board of your old firm. They wanted to use my name, not my presence. I'm not interested in legacy if it's built on absence." Her gaze softened just slightly. "And Camille?" she asked, the name slicing clean through the air. He met her eyes. "Gone. Completely. She reached out a few months ago. I didn't reply." "Not even for closure?" He shook his head. "You don't get closure from people you wounded. You get clarity from living differently." A long pause. Elena sipped her tea. "That's the most honest thing you've ever said." He smiled faintly. Took a while. She set her cup down. "So why lunch now?" "You asked. And you didn't ask why." He leaned in, voice low. "Because I trust your timing." Her breath caught. Barely, but he saw it. Before either of them could say more, the server arrived, plates in hand, and the moment passed. They ate slowly. Conversation drifting between Maya's latest obsession with singing everything, including grocery lists, and the youth choir's upcoming summer retreat. Then Eleanor set her fork down. "There's something else." Grayson wiped his mouth with the napkin, suddenly alert. "I've been offered a position in Atlanta, a music program that works with underserved schools, full-time." His heart dropped. She watched his face closely. "It's a big opportunity." He nodded slowly. "It is." "I haven't said yes yet," she added. "But I'm thinking about it." He swallowed. "What about Maya?" "They'd provide housing. A good school." "It's stable." "And what about me?" Elena's eyes flickered. "That's the part I don't know." Silence stretched between them. He exhaled. "So this is the next test?" "No," she said softly. "This is my life. It's not a test. It's a decision I have to make for me, for her, not to hurt you. Not to run, but to grow." He looked down at his plate, appetite gone. "Would you come?" she asked quietly. "If I asked." His eyes snapped up. "I'm not asking," she said quickly. "Not yet. I need to know if your change is portable. Or if it only lives here, in the safety of your redemption arc." He leaned back, the weight of the question sinking deep into his chest. "I'd follow you," he said finally. "Not because I want to chase, but because I believe in what you're building, and I want to be worthy of being in that world." She looked away, blinking fast. "You don't have to say all the right things anymore." "I'm not. I'm saying the real things. She stood then, quietly, placing her napkin on the table. I'll think about everything, she said. So will I. As she walked away, he noticed the way her steps had changed. Slower, steadier, like she wasn't running anymore. Like maybe, for the first time, they were moving toward the same horizon, even if they hadn't figured out how to get there yet. He stayed at the table long after she was gone, the jasmine scent lingering, her empty teacup still warm across from him. And for the first time since she left, he didn't feel like a man waiting to be chosen. He felt like a man learning how to choose better, even if it meant letting go. A soft knock echoed through the quiet of Elena's living room. She hesitated, drying her hands on a towel, and glanced at the clock. 7:12 p.m. Maya was already in bed. The dishes were done, and the day had been long in the kind of way that drained your heart more than your body. She opened the door slowly. Grayson stood there in the fading porch light, hands in his pockets, expression unsure. I know it's late, he said gently. Is Maya okay? She asked instinctively. She's fine. This isn't about her. It's about us. Elena studied his face, his posture, the way his shoulders weren't pulled up like they used to be when he came bearing apologies. He looked grounded, tired, but grounded. Come in, she said quietly, stepping aside. He entered with the careful energy of someone who knew they were a guest, not a resident of her life anymore. I got a call today, he said, taking the edge of the armchair, but not fully sitting. From Atlanta. Her heart paused. The music foundation I reached out to. They want me to help lead a new program. It's community-based. Education meets technology. Inner-city schools. It's real work. Elena blinked. You applied? He nodded. Weeks ago. Quietly. I didn't want to pressure you by making it about you. She folded her arms. Then why tell me now? Because they offered, and I want to accept. The room felt suddenly too still. I don't want to follow you to Atlanta, he said, voice calm. I want to meet you there, as someone rebuilding his life on his own terms. Her throat tightened. That's a lot. I know. She sat down slowly across from him. So you're not asking me to wait for you? No. I'm asking if I can walk beside you. At your pace. She stared at him for a long moment, her mind swimming in questions. Her heart didn't leap. It pressed gently against the sides of her chest, cautious, curious. Grayson, she said slowly, you've spent a year trying to undo something that can't be undone. I know. And I've spent that same year figuring out how to not hate you for it. He didn't flinch. I'd never expect forgiveness on a timeline. She looked at her hands. Maya deserves peace. Stability, not emotional whiplash. I agree. And I deserve clarity, not performances. He leaned in slightly. Then let's build something steady, with honesty, no performances. She took a slow breath, her eyes rising to meet his. Do you still love me? His voice didn't shake. Yes, but that's not why I'm here. I came because I respect you, because I believe in the world you're building. A silence settled between them again, but this time, it wasn't cold. It was reflective. What do you want, Grayson? She asked, voice softer now. If I took Maya to Atlanta, if I started over, I want to be part of her story. Not just as the man who hurt her mother, but as the man who chose better every day after. Eleanor's eyes glistened, not with sadness, with something more fragile, more dangerous, hope. You're asking for something I don't know how to give yet. I'm not asking, he said. I'm offering. She stood, walked slowly to the window, and pulled the curtain slightly. Outside, the oak trees swayed gently in the dark. Familiar. Comforting. Rooted. Atlanta feels like a cliff, she whispered. And I'm scared of leaping without knowing what catches me. He stepped closer. Then don't leap alone. She turned to face him. We're not a couple, Grayson. I know. We may never be again. I know that too. Then why does this still feel like a proposal? He smiled, but it was quiet, tempered. Because in a way, it is. Elena didn't smile back, not fully, but her hand reached for the corner of the letter on the console table, the one he'd written for Maya, the one she hadn't let her read yet. She handed it to him. Read it to her. Tomorrow. If you're serious, I am. Then you'll show up. You'll be present. Even if Atlanta means new fears. New failures. I'm not afraid of failure anymore, he said. You used to be. I used to be a lot of things. She nodded slowly. So did I. The rain started again, soft and steady. Grayson looked at her, not with longing, but with gratitude. She didn't open the door to let him back in. She opened it because she knew he wouldn't force it. I'll see you tomorrow, he said, stepping back into the night. She watched him go, then closed the door gently. And in the silence that followed, she whispered to the empty room, He's changing. Not for her, but finally, for himself. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains, casting a soft glow across Elena's kitchen as she poured orange juice into a tiny ceramic cup, the one with the faded giraffe Maya refused to part with. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the old ceiling fan and the occasional creak of settling wood. It was a Sunday, and it felt like one, slow, cautious, full of unsaid things waiting to unfold. Maya sat at the table, legs swinging, humming something under her breath. A melody Elena didn't recognize but could tell was her own invention. Music lived in that child's bones. She was just setting the toast down when the knock came. Elena didn't startle. She'd expected it. She opened the door to find Grayson holding two things, a folded letter and a small paper bag that smelled like the cinnamon pastries from the bakery on the corner. She still loves these? He asked. She never stopped, Elena said, stepping aside. Maya gasped when she saw him, springing off her chair. Daddy! He caught her mid-air, laughing as he spun her around. Morning, sunshine. Did you bring the twisty kind? She asked, squinting at the bag. I brought two, one for you and one for Mommy. She grinned. Mommy always says one is enough. She says that, but she eats the corners off yours, he whispered, and Maya giggled like it was the most scandalous thing in the world. Elena arched a brow as she poured a third cup of juice. You're not wrong. Grayson followed them into the kitchen, nerves stirring under his calm. He set the letter on the counter, watching it land like a promise. I'd like to read it, he said quietly. To her? Elena asked, keeping her voice neutral. He nodded. Maya climbed into her chair, sticky fingers already reaching for the pastry. What letter? It's something I wrote just for you, he said, sitting across from her. Elena leaned against the counter, arms crossed but open. She didn't say yes, but she didn't stop him either. Grayson unfolded the paper. His hands didn't shake, but his voice was slower than usual, every word chosen, every breath measured. Dear Maya, he began, eyes on the page. You don't know this yet, but there was a time I didn't know how to be your dad. I thought love had to be perfect. That if I messed up, I wasn't worthy of it. But I was wrong. Maya chewed slower now, eyes wide. I missed your first words. Your first steps, your first birthday. Not because I didn't care, but because I was lost. And being lost made me afraid. Afraid to face the truth that I'd hurt your mom. Afraid you'd grow up thinking I didn't try. He paused, looked at her. But I am trying now, every single day, not just for you, but because of you. You make me want to be a man you'll be proud of, not someday, but now. Maya blinked. Is that the end? Grayson smiled. Almost. He turned the page over. Someday, you'll ask why Mommy and I didn't stay married. And when that day comes, I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you I made a mistake. A big one. But I'll also tell you that your mom is the strongest person I've ever known, and that she loved you with her whole heart before she even met you. He folded the letter, setting it gently on the table. Maya stared at him. Can I keep it? It's yours, he said. Elena walked over, placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, and met Grayson's eyes. Her voice was barely a whisper. Thank you for not making it about you. He nodded. It never really was. I just couldn't see that. They cleaned up slowly. No rush, no edge, just 3 people in a kitchen full of quiet grace. Later that afternoon, Grayson stood in the front yard, watching as Maya rode her scooter along the sidewalk. Elena joined him, arms folded against the soft breeze. She's going to remember today, Elena said. I hope she does. Not the letter. The way you looked at her when you read it. Grayson's throat tightened. How did I look? Like you weren't waiting for applause. He glanced at her, the words landing. I don't know what happens next, she said. Neither do I. But I'm not afraid of the next page anymore. He smiled, heart full without being heavy. Me neither. Maya came bounding back up the walk, cheeks flushed. Mommy, can Daddy come to movie night tonight? Elena hesitated, then, only if he brings the popcorn. Grayson grinned. I'll bring the butter too. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, and the day folded into a calm, uncertain dusk, something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't a new beginning. It was steadiness. And for now, that was everything. The air inside the church was thick with anticipation, a quiet buzz that seemed to hum in the stained glass light spilling across polished wooden pews. The youth choir's summer concert had drawn more than the usual crowd. Teachers, parents, even donors, faces familiar and new, had come to hear what the kids had been working on for weeks. Grayson stood in the back, fingers laced in front of him, trying not to shift too much. His tie felt too tight, or maybe his thoughts were. He hadn't spoken to Eleanor much in the past few days. Things between them were careful, not cold, not warm. Just tender, like skin healing after a burn. Maya peeked out from behind the side curtain, spotted him, and waved. He smiled, gave her the thumbs up. Her pigtails bounced as she disappeared again. Stop pacing, a voice said from his left. He turned to see Rachel, arms crossed, a grin tugging at the corners of her mouth. I'm not pacing. You're bouncing on your heels. I'm just nervous for Maya. Rachel tilted her head. You sure that's all it is? Grayson didn't answer. A few minutes later, the room dimmed and Elena stepped to the front, wearing a long emerald green dress that made the gold in her skin glow like a candle in a quiet room. She didn't need a microphone. Her voice carried with ease and confidence. Thank you all for being here tonight, she began, eyes sweeping the room but pausing just slightly when they reached Grayson. Tonight's performance is about more than music. It's about growth, about second chances, about voices finding their way. Grayson felt every word. She turned toward the children and nodded. The piano began, soft and slow. Maya stood in the second row, her posture perfect, her eyes forward. When she opened her mouth, Grayson forgot to breathe. The song wasn't just a performance. It was a story, woven through lyrics and harmonies about courage, forgiveness, and what it meant to return to yourself. And though it wasn't said, Grayson felt it. It was about them. He saw it in the way Elena watched Maya, with that complex mix of pride and ache. The kind only a mother who's walked through fire could wear, without falling apart. The final note rang out, and the audience erupted in applause. Grayson clapped too, but slower. Softer, because his heart was full in a way that felt fragile. As the crowd filtered out, he waited near the side exit. Eleanor appeared moments later, clipboard in hand, shoulders relaxed for the first time all night. "You pulled it off," he said, offering a quiet smile. She gave him a look, one eyebrow raised. "You doubted me?" "Never." She let the compliment sit for a moment before answering. "The kids did the hard part. You made space for them to believe they could." They stood there, close but not touching. The silence between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with possibility. "Maya's asking to stay up late to celebrate," she said. "Wants pizza and a movie." Grayson grinned. "What's the bribe?" Elena sighed. "She said she'd do the dishes all weekend." "That's suspiciously generous." "She's learning," Elena said, then paused. "We all are." He took a slow breath. "Can I talk to you? Alone?" "Just for a minute." She glanced toward the hallway, where volunteers were helping kids change out of their concert attire. "Okay," she said. They stepped into a side room used for music storage. It was dim, dusty, and full of forgotten instruments, but it was quiet. Grayson shut the door gently behind them. "I know this isn't the place for speeches," he began. "But you brought one anyway?" she said softly. He smiled. "Just the truth." She waited. "I want to come to Atlanta," he said. "Not because I'm following you. Because I want to build something there, too." Elena's arms tightened across her chest. "Grayson, I'm not asking for a relationship," he cut in. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm asking for space in the same city, to raise our daughter with rhythm, to prove that what we started, what we broke, doesn't have to be the end." Her breath shook just once. "It's not easy for me to believe in second chapters." "I don't want a second chapter," he said. "I want a whole new story. One where we're not the same people. One where we move forward. Even if it's in parallel." Elena looked at the dusty cello case in the corner. "You hurt me more than I've ever let on." "I know," he said, "and I'll carry that." Quietly, not as shame, but as reminder. She finally looked at him, really looked. "I believe you." It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a surrender. It was a shift, a door not flung open but unlocked. He stepped back, giving her space. "Whatever comes next," he said, "let's make sure it has Maya in the center, and honesty in the corners." She nodded, slowly. Then, in the softest voice, she said, "Come over tomorrow. She's going to ask anyway." He smiled, exhaled, and this time when he opened the door to leave, the air didn't feel like goodbye. It felt like the first note of something new, The smell of cinnamon and melting mozzarella filled the kitchen, tangled with laughter, light, and something more fragile: ease. Maya sat cross-legged on the living room rug, hands full of crayons, drawing a crooked picture of the three of them. Her stick-figure dad had a crown. Her mom had a heart. Grayson stood at the stove, flipping the last slice of garlic bread, while Elena poured 2 glasses of sparkling water. They hadn't done this in over 2 years, shared space that felt lived in, not forced. There was no tension in the air, no questions that needed fast answers, only glances. Pauses. That slow-building awareness of presence without pressure. "She's different with you in the house," Elena said, handing him a glass. Grayson took it, his fingers brushing hers. "How?" "More animated. Like she wants you to see her joy in real time." "She's the best thing I've ever been a part of," he said, voice low. Elena nodded, her eyes drifting to the drawing on the floor. "She's the most forgiving person I've ever met." He set down the glass. "Do you think she gets that from you?" "I think she gets that in spite of me." Grayson frowned, but she held up a hand before he could respond. "I'm not putting myself down. I just mean, it's hard, teaching her about trust when I'm still figuring out how to rebuild it myself." "You're doing it," he said gently, "one quiet miracle at a time." A knock came at the door before she could respond. Elena looked confused. "I wasn't expecting anyone." Maya jumped up. "I'll get it." Elena and Grayson followed closely behind. Rachel stood in the doorway, hair wind-tossed, holding a small wrapped package in both hands. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she said. "Never," Elena smiled, stepping aside. "Come in." Rachel handed Maya the package. A little something for the artist in residence. Maya beamed and ran to the table to open it. Grayson gave his sister a look. "You knew we were having dinner?" "She told me," Rachel said, nodding toward Elena. "I asked. She didn't volunteer." Elena shrugged, unbothered. Rachel pulled Grayson aside, her voice a whisper. "You should know. Diane found out you're moving to Atlanta." Grayson's face fell. "How?" "She saw a draft announcement from the foundation." "It'll go public next week," he exhaled. "And? She's furious. She thinks it's weak." "Thinks you're chasing Elena." "I'm not chasing anyone," he said firmly. "I know that. But you should be ready. She's already called the board. She's trying to pull your name off the community initiatives in Charleston." Grayson looked past his sister to Elena, who was now helping Maya unwrap watercolor pens. Rachel touched his arm. "You've got a real shot at something whole here. Don't let our mother shrink it into something strategic." He nodded. "Thanks for the warning." After Rachel left, dinner passed in a blur of pizza grease and Maya stories. Grayson cleared the table while Elena got Maya ready for bed. When she returned to the kitchen, he was wiping down the counter, sleeves rolled up, completely at ease. "You're a better guest than I remember," she teased. "Guilt makes a man handy." She leaned against the fridge. "Rachel told you, didn't she?" He nodded. "Diane's playing her game. She always plays long. She'll lose this one," he said. "I'm not asking you to burn bridges, Grayson." "I'm not," he said quietly. "I'm just refusing to cross back over them." Eleanor's expression shifted. There it was again. That flicker of belief that kept showing up in small, tender doses. "You know," she said, "I never expected you to really come through. I hoped, but I didn't believe it." He looked at her, steady. "I never really showed you who I was. Maybe you didn't know. Maybe I was afraid to find out." Silence stretched between them, intimate and thick. "You're not afraid anymore?" she asked. I'm still afraid, he said, but I don't let it lead me. They stood there for a moment, two people on the other side of a storm neither fully understood, but somehow survived. Then Maya's voice drifted down the hallway. "Mommy? Daddy?" "I want my bedtime song." Grayson turned to Elena. "Can I?" She hesitated, then nodded. He walked down the hallway slowly, his footsteps soft against the floorboards. Elena followed a few seconds later and leaned in the doorway, watching as he sat beside Maya on the edge of the bed, stroking her hair gently while humming the melody Elena used to sing, low, imperfect, but full of something more important than pitch. Presence. As Maya's eyes fluttered closed, Elena stepped into the hallway, her heart pounding for reasons she hadn't admitted yet. Grayson joined her outside the room, closing the door behind him softly. "She was asleep before I got through the second verse," he whispered. "You're the calm she never got to have," she said. He looked at her, his voice barely audible. "And you're the compass I forgot I needed." They didn't move, didn't reach for each other. But they didn't step back either. It was balance, hard-won, earned. And for the first time, Elena didn't fear what might come next. She was ready to find out. Elena stood center stage in the old town hall auditorium, hands clasped behind her back as the youth choir's sound check wound down. The soft thrum of children's voices echoing through the rafters had always steadied her. Until today. The Regional Arts Board was in attendance. Atlanta reps were flying in tonight, and in less than 48 hours, she'd be submitting her final decision. Stay or go. She glanced down at the program in her hand, Maya's name typed cleanly under the solo piece. Beneath it, in smaller letters, accompaniment, Grayson Whitmore, a choice she'd made 2 weeks ago. A choice she hadn't yet told him about. "Elena?" Nina's voice called from the aisle, half a whisper, half a warning. "You okay?" Elena nodded, though her stomach told a different story. "Just nerves." "You? Nerves?" Nina tilted her head. "That's not nerves. That's decision fatigue. I thought making the offer to Grayson would feel resolved, like I'd finally untied the last knot. And instead, it felt like I pulled one tighter." Nina didn't press, just handed her a bottle of water and squeezed her shoulder. "Tell him before the performance. No one plays well with a blindfold on." Later that evening, the soft tap of Grayson's shoes echoed down the side hallway as he entered through the stage entrance, carrying his guitar case with one hand, a wrinkled music folder tucked under the other arm. He spotted Elena by the wings and smiled, gentle, curious. "Didn't think I'd be on stage again after high school jazz band." "You'll survive," she said. He stepped closer. "You sure you want me backing her up?" "There's a music teacher 2 counties over who could do this with her eyes closed." "She doesn't want perfect," Elena said quietly. "She wants her father." That stopped him. He looked down, cleared his throat, then lifted his gaze to hers. "What's going on?" She hesitated, then motioned toward a nearby bench. They sat, silence settling over them like a curtain before the act. "I got the final contract," she said. "Atlanta wants me to start the week after next." His jaw tightened just slightly. "That soon?" She nodded. "It's not just a job, Grayson. It's a life shift for me, for Maya." "I know," he said. "And I meant what I said. I want to be there, not just near it, in it." She looked at him, eyes narrowing. "And if I told you I wasn't sure if I wanted you there yet?" He didn't flinch. "Then I'd still go." Her breath caught. "Because this isn't about whether you let me in," he continued. "It's about proving I'm not building my future around guilt anymore. I'm building it around purpose, around Maya." "Around me." A long pause. "I believe you," she said. "But I'm scared that if we move to the same place, everything we've rebuilt here, the slow pace, the grace, the honesty, might collapse under the pressure of proximity." Grayson nodded, the weight of it settling in. "I don't want us to become what we were," she said, "even by accident." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a simple sketch. 3 circles overlapping, Maya, Eleanor, him. No labels, just the space where they met. "I made this," he said, "to remind me that love doesn't live in just one circle." Elena studied it. Her eyes glossed over. "I'll be there," he said softly. "Not on your doorstep, not in your way, just there." Showing up. The house lights blinked twice, a 10-minute warning. She looked up. Maya's waiting. They stood. As they moved to the side of the stage, Maya waved them over, cheeks flushed, hair in loose curls. "You ready, Daddy?" Grayson crouched to her level. "I've been practicing every day." "Even the bridge part?" "Especially the bridge." Elena placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "Remember what I told you? The song doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be true." Maya nodded solemnly. Backstage, as the lights dimmed and the murmurs of the crowd softened, Grayson took his place beside the piano, guitar in hand. Maya stepped into the spotlight with the comfort of someone who'd been loved into confidence. When the music started, Grayson kept his eyes on the strings. But halfway through, he looked up. Elena was watching him, not with hesitation, with hope. Maya's voice soared, clear and bright, and when she sang the last line, "I've found home in the quiet of love that stays," the entire room held its breath. And then the applause came, but Grayson didn't move, because Elena hadn't stopped watching him. And in that quiet, sacred pause before the curtain fell, he saw it in her eyes. The door she'd been afraid to open was no longer locked, just waiting. The next morning broke gently over Charleston, light sliding across the floorboards of Elena's kitchen in quiet gold. She stood at the counter, stirring cream into her coffee, still in her robe, hair messy, the echo of Maya's concert voice lingering in the air like a half-remembered melody. She hadn't slept much. Not because of nerves, not even because of the weight of the decision looming in the week ahead, but because something had shifted last night, subtly but undeniably. The way Grayson had looked at her, not like a man trying to be forgiven, like a man who had forgiven himself. She turned when the knock came. It wasn't expected, but somehow she wasn't surprised. She opened the door to find Grayson holding a small potted plant. Not roses, not anything dramatic. Just lavender. Simple, grounded. "Maya's still asleep," she said, stepping aside. "This isn't for her," he said. "It's for you." She raised an eyebrow. "Lavender? You said once you wished something in your life would grow, without you having to fight for it." Her throat caught. "I don't need to come in," he added. "I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For yesterday. For trusting me enough to let me stand beside her." Eleanor nodded, accepting the plant, brushing her fingers along the soft green edge. "You were more than ready." "I wasn't, but I showed up anyway." She gave a soft, tired smile. "That's the difference." He lingered on the step. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends." "If I hadn't changed, really changed, would you still be leaving?" She held his gaze. Yes. He nodded, no bitterness in his expression. Just clarity. But I also wouldn't be asking what I'm about to ask, she added. That made him pause. I've been thinking, she said slowly, about Atlanta, about what it really means to start over. And I realized I don't want to just move somewhere new. I want to move forward, and I can't do that if I'm still scared of the past. Grayson waited, not rushing her. I want you there, she said. Not beside me, not behind me, but nearby. Building your own roots, showing Maya what presence means. And us? He asked, barely above a whisper. She took a breath, looked at him carefully. Let's not call it us yet. Let's call it now. And let's honor that first. He nodded, his chest rising with something close to peace. She stepped back, holding the door open just slightly. You want coffee? He blinked. Now? She shrugged. I'm not making a second cup for someone who's not staying at least 10 minutes. He smiled, stepping inside. I can do 10. As they moved into the kitchen, Maya's small footsteps pattered down the hallway. Daddy? She yawned, rubbing her eyes. Hey, sleepyhead, he said, crouching down. You were a star last night. She lit up. Did you like the end? I loved every note. Elena poured him coffee as Maya climbed onto the bench by the window. Grayson joined her there, sipping from the mug, his eyes meeting Elena's across the kitchen. And then, without a script, without ceremony, Maya slid between them and rested her head on each of their shoulders, one tiny body anchoring two grown hearts. Elena closed her eyes, just for a moment. Because for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was choosing between what was right for her and what was safe for her daughter. They could both have both, as long as they kept showing up. As long as they let it be slow and soft and true. The lavender plant sat on the windowsill catching light, and something deep inside her whispered, let it grow. The Atlanta skyline shimmered in the distance, bathed in soft amber light as the sun began its slow descent. On the rooftop terrace of the Midtown Arts Center, the buzz of final setup filled the air. Folding chairs being arranged, strings tuned, lights tested one last time before the evening showcase. It was Elena's first official concert as program director. The city's cultural community had shown up in full. Grayson stood at the far end of the terrace, adjusting the collar of Maya's dress shirt as she squirmed and tugged at the sleeves. I told you it's itchy, she muttered. I know, kiddo, but for 5 more minutes, pretend it's made of clouds. She narrowed her eyes. Scratchy clouds, he laughed. The scratchiest. Elena stepped out from the stairwell entrance, clipboard in hand, but her stride slowed when she saw them. Grayson kneeling, trying to fix a crooked button. Maya half pouting, half smiling. It was ordinary in the most extraordinary way. She didn't interrupt, just watched, letting the moment imprint itself before the curtain of time moved on. Grayson looked up and caught her gaze. You look at home, she said softly. He rose, brushing off his pants. I am. There was no question in his voice. No doubt. Is she nervous? Eleanor asked, nodding toward Maya. Terrified. She'll be brilliant. She always is. They walked slowly toward the edge of the terrace where the view opened up to the skyline, steel and glass framed by soft twilight. After tonight, things will get busier, Eleanor said. More press, more expectations. Grayson nodded. You built something real here. I'm proud of you. She looked down at her hands. Sometimes I still wonder if it's okay to be proud of what I built without you. He turned to her, not hurt. just earnest. It's not only okay, it's necessary. You had to become someone whole on your own, so I could finally meet you as an equal. A quiet pause stretched between them, full but not heavy. Do you ever think about the version of us that didn't fall apart? She asked, eyes still on the skyline. Every now and then, he said, but I don't miss it. She turned to him, surprised. I miss the idea, he clarified. But that version of us, it was too quiet about the things that mattered, too quick to gloss over the hard questions. This is better. We're honest. Elena nodded slowly, her chest tight with something she didn't want to name too quickly. After the showcase, we're all getting gelato, she said. You should come. Wouldn't miss it. I didn't say you were invited, he smiled. You didn't have to. A voice called from the far end of the terrace. 5 minutes. Eleanor turned to go, then paused. Grayson. He stopped. Do you still love me? She asked. Not like a challenge. Like a truth in need of acknowledgement. He met her gaze without flinching. Every day. In new ways, in slower, better ways. She smiled, soft and slow. I'm still learning how to hold that. I'm not going anywhere. When the performance began, Maya stood front and center, her voice just a little louder than it needed to be, like she wanted her parents to hear every word. Grayson sat near the front. Elena stood near the wings. Their eyes met only once, but that was enough. After the applause died and the chairs were folded away, and the rooftop emptied under the stars, Maya tugged on both their hands. Gelato now? Elena looked at Grayson. Let's go, she said. They walked together through the lit streets of Atlanta, hand in hand in hand. Not as a couple, not yet. But as something better than what they were before. Whole. Growing. Still becoming. And in the stillness between conversations, with laughter floating behind them and the scent of sugar and summer in the air, Elena realized something she hadn't dared to believe until now. Some stories don't need to return to what they were. Some stories are meant to find their way home by becoming something entirely new. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought matters to me either way.